All right, this is the ninth Triple Triad interview I am releasing. I'm very excited for it. It is Dalamar. Obviously, Dalamar is one of the two most important people in the site's history, Triple Triad Advance, if not the most important person. Really value all he contributes. His patience more than anything is unbelievable, and what he has put up with, how well he handles various drama, it's all fantastic, and is a huge reason the site is the lovely place it is. So really excited to interview him. I kind of wanted it to be on a whole number, like it would be the 10th interview or the 20th interview. But then I remembered that when the Legends deck came out, I know there were two Legends decks, but I was only around for the second one. When the second Legends deck came out, they asked Dalamar and Balls, where would you like to be? And they wanted to be level 9s. So I thought it would be fitting to kind of honor that, to have it be the 9th interview. And also, I liked that neither of them has ever kind of forced themselves to the forefront of what the site is. Sometimes they have naturally come to it. Dalamar has led a whole number of clans, but it's never been something where, because they run the operation, they use that power over others. They've been just tremendously good at kind of wielding the small scale power of the world of Triple Triad, and I really respect that. I think I would not do nearly as well. So let's get into the interview. How would you describe your Triple Triad player style? Frustratingly inconsistent. I'll do well for a bit, with like with Dorf's Battle of the Decks and Clan League, and then just do completely terribly for a month or two. Especially with the weekly GBs, and even with those, I tend to do well in one every couple months. Looks like the next one I should actually play would be in mid-May. Yeah, it is tough to have inconsistent results. Who's your most interesting opponent? Provided I'm actually paying attention to what I'm doing, games with Tezuka are usually pretty interesting, though we do tend to play each other more when testing various hands out, so that likely adds to it a bit. Yeah, I think both of these are players, both Dal and Tezuka. Incidentally, spoilers, my next interview to come out will be Tezuka. I think both of them like exploring the hand space and figuring out what's available within it, and often want to find their own kind of ideas and path through ideas. And I know Dalamar comes out with hand ideas. I remember Scythe, after he actually beat Tezuka in Clan League, said, yeah, he just took a hand that Dalamar had put in the Twin Moons chat and just thought, that hand looks good, I'll run it, and then he won. Who is your toughest opponent? Not really sure who I'd put here, as I lose to pretty much everybody fairly often. Can I just say the random rule? Yeah, that is a fair answer. The random rule can be an unkind mistress. What formation or move type do you like more than other players do? This can be for either open or closed, or answer for both. This will be more of a hand-building strategy than a formation or move type really, but since Tezuka started his monthly hand bounty competition, I spent a bit of time trying to come up with hands based around 2 random cards. Usually for those, I'll pick one of the cards to be a 5 starter and use the other one for one of the corners, and try to find cards that work well with the 2 random cards. Makes for some interesting attempts at hand building, even if they don't turn out well, since the cards tend to play off what I have fairly well, but might not against whatever my opponent has. Yeah, I used to run hands like that all the time, where I'd pick something like, I had a hand with a Tonberry King and Cypher, and I'd play Tonberry King in 5, and then Cypher would go somewhere, and I picked other cards that had either pluses or sames and adjacent squares, and built setups around that where Cypher could go, and I think either 1 or 9, and then I had another card for 3 or 7, and there was a capture card that got Cypher back both ways, and a capture card that got the other one back both ways nicely. And I think this is a fun way to build hands, and as Dal correctly points out here, the difficulty can be you're often lining up stuff to take exactly what you have, and it can't necessarily flip other numbers. And it becomes easier if you do it starting with power cards, right? You're going to end up with a more powerful hand. But usually when you're driven to do this, you're trying to do something more creative. And yeah, I remember on my secret second account back in the day, Juninho, I played that Tonberry hand a bit, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a fun way to build hands. I like it as a method. What formation or move type do you like less than other players do? Not sure I like it less than other people, but the X formation always seems to work against me, even when I'm the one to set it up. God, my feelings on the X formation change every week in the return. I think a couple comments on it. I think it favors the first turn player more if combo is on. I think without combo, having the needed, say, triple capture to win the game is harder to have. But with combo, often if you can combo through 5 or combo through a square, often you get an extra capture and you don't need to be able to capture everything you're touching. You just need to be able to combo specific cards. Similarly, as a second turn player, I think it's better to allow the X if combo is off. But it's all difficult, and it also depends on, I think, what moves you got there from. Like, I think the X is a lot more defensible from some move orders than others, and that makes it a very confusing thing. Anyhow, favorite way to meet a corner starter, a side starter, a center starter. Mostly depends on the rule set and what my hand looks like. I try to look for things that can't be comboed back if possible. For corner starters, I usually start by looking to see if I can place something in 5 that'll set up another card for both of the adjacent squares. And incidentally, in the Dalamar games, which are going to be up on YouTube in a couple days, and I really like the games. I think you'll really enjoy them. They're some of my favorites that I've looked at. Dal has a very nice win replying to a corner starter with the center play against a very strong opponent, too. For side starters, probably tend to look at the spots next to the starter to see if there's anything I can play that's somewhat safe. Yeah, I think that should be the first instinct. For center starters, I usually look at the corners first to see what I can potentially set up. That is my tendency too. I know some players look for side stuff, but I tend to be a corner-oriented player at most times. Do you have a preferred starter type? Does that change between random and hand games? Does it change between open and closed? Don't really have a preferred starter type, but would likely change depending on what I'm using and what the opponent has, if it's open. My random luck is horrible, so usually with random games, I try to see if there's a card I can play in a corner that can be recaptured from both sides. If I don't have that, usually just toss what looks to be my weakest card in 5 and go from there. Though if I get FF7 cards in random, I usually try to get them out of my hand as quickly as possible. Interestingly though, Dal also feels players are going at him a bit when they lead with their FF7 cards. So maybe if you're playing Dal, hold off the FF7 card use to hit him with it on like that third move just when he's thinking he's safe, no FF7 this game, and then you, from your closed hand. Also, I have a basketball game in the in the background here because the playoffs are happening. There's a lot of fouls happening in Game 5 of Timberwolves Grizzlies that look like they're going to be technical calls. That said, let's return to the much more important interview. What is your proudest triple triad moment? Probably TTAC1 may also be the most frustrating moment for me as well. Passing the Avalanche Elite tryout back on TTX would be up there as well. Likely would have been the top moment if it had been against Lionheart, as I tried so many times against him and failed. Yeah, it's fun talking to the people who've been around longer, Ace in the last interview and now Dalamar. And just hearing when I was starting just how much respect people had and how proud people were of getting into certain clans through specific recruiters. And that was where you hear names like Nimloth and Lionheart more than anywhere else, of just like, here's this unbeatable person and you keep trying and getting into clans. And I assume the Avalanche Elite tryout was, moving up stages within Avalanche's hierarchy. Winning those tryouts is really, really impressive. TTAC1 is an interesting tournament. I can bring up the bracket because a bunch of games didn't get played. And I know some of Dal's frustration here is he got all of his games done and other people didn't. And so he had to win more rounds to get that far than they did. But let's look at the run. In his first site championship, he beats Cloud's Kid in the first round, which Now I want to say that's CK, but I think that's what CK's second account is now. I'm not sure it is, but a solid tournament player. Then he beat Addy in round 2. Now Addy has always been a solid player, especially in formats where closed is included, but is a solid open player too. And Addy had just beaten Gafgarian in round 1, who's historically a very good and pretty underrated player, I think, in records, and one of the many great Polish players. So Dal makes it to round 3, and most people to make it to round 3 did not play all their games. He then beats, I'm going to pronounce it Cecil because I'm American, but if you're not, Cecil, or however it's said, to make the semifinals where Aurora and Broccoli advance ahead of him. But he did have to play more rounds than they did. And yeah, really nice run. Dalamar's early runs were the main thing that got him into my top 100 tournament players of all time, though, as has been said with the inconsistency stuff, goes in and out of having nice runs. Should Delial be banned? Yes or absolutely. Banned from the site? Nah. If you want to ban him from AVL, though, we have a spot in Twin Moons that's open if he wants to switch clans. Though I seem to have somewhat bad luck getting Delial to join clans I'm in. No deal. Sorry. I wonder where Deli would go if I did kick him out of AVL. I think if I tried to kick Deli out of AVL, I would get a revolt, and what would end up happening would be I would no longer be in charge of AVL, or perhaps in AVL at all, and Delial still would be. So I think we cannot pull this scheme off. Alright. Should Elemental be abolished? Yes or immediately? Absolutely not. In fact, it should be used more often. People need to stop being afraid of it. So I actually played my Triad Wars round 2 games earlier today, and there was a line I calculated where I was pretty sure I knew how Elemental worked, but not entirely. So I ended up going for a different tie that didn't depend on me being correct about how Elemental works. And I think that was good match strategy, but kind of dumb on my part because I really should know how it works more firmly in my head. I think I was right. I think both moves tied, but I'm not 100% sure. What clans will always have a place in your heart? Avalanche. Pretty sure it was the first clan I ever joined, though still not sure why I was ever asked to join back then. And yes, I'm fully prepared for all the FF7 comments that'll be coming my way. I just want to say, I think it's, it's tough. It shows a certain, mental fortitude to be able to publicly admit that Avalanche holds a place in his heart. I think we can all appreciate that, and then we can send him our FF7 comments. Wethril Odorim. Had a decent run as a top clan for a few years, they definitely did, until somebody left to take over leadership of a different clan, though still had a decent run for a bit after that. Yeah, Wethril Odorim is easily one of the most impressive clans of the end run of the initial run of the site. Player you think is most underrated? I'm just going to use the time from the site's return for this one as it's easier, going mostly by Nephilim and Clan League results, as I don't think I've played either of them much outside of GBs. I'd say Crescent or DJ. Both had decent runs in Nephilim and did really well in CL, with DJ's only CL loss coming from Crescent. Yeah, very good picks. Very good picks. Playing Crescent in round 1 of Triad Wars, I was so impressed. I thought I got outplayed both games and was incredibly lucky to survive that. And DJ has just been awesome as well. Excellent choices. Who are your top 3 to 5 picks for GOAT? Just listing these 4 in alphabetical order. Delial Seto was up Yojimbo. Stupid alphabetical order giving people an out. Though they never really played on TTA much, Lionheart and Black Bolt. As mentioned previously, Lionheart was normally the one I went to when I was trying to pass an elite tryout for Avalanche, as I felt he was the hardest to beat at the time, so would have made winning the tryout mean that much more, at least for me anyway. Black Bolt was pretty similar. Yeah, I clearly don't have the perspective to do so. Someone like Dalamar would be much better than me at this. But just kind of, you can look at tournament results and get a pretty objective count of, who's done well in tournaments. But a lot of the great players either happened kind of before tournaments or did not really take much part in tournaments, and we have limited stuff. It would be interesting to just do, the 10 just incredibly talented people who like seem to see everything. And I think Lionheart and probably Black Bolt would both make that list. We'd get, more Doc Evil, we'd get Nimloth, we'd get some of the tournament greats too, but it would be fun to do a video. And again, I just don't think I'm equipped to do it, but it would be neat to do a video about like just the incredibly talented players. I think that would be fun to figure out a way to do, and I just like hearing more about them. When did you start playing, and what was your favorite era? TT.com, so sometime in 2000. Not really sure on favorite era. Favorite rule set. As mentioned in a previous video, I'll play pretty much anything, so don't really have a favorite rule set. I do prefer anything that forces people to actually be creative with handmaking though. Single deck or a limit of 2 to 3 decks, all level random, can be pretty fun though. Yeah, I think the single deck stuff is interesting either open or closed, right? Because making reads on someone's hands when they have limited selection, even in randoms, it becomes much more available, right? Like, if you think, okay, they have set up a plus in 2, I'm confident they've set up a plus in 2, but which cards could they have? If there's 10 decks to choose from, you can't make a specific pick. But you can start with very few decks. You can start making other kind of reads. I don't like enclosed when me and my opponent have the same card, because like it sucks when like someone's been setting up combos for themselves and it turns out they've just made the game hopeless for themselves. But I do think it can have some really interesting effects in closed and in open. And I also... Dalamar has mentioned from time to time that one of the reasons TTAC has been his best tournament is it tends to have stipulations that cut off more paths to lane hand building. And that he's going to perform better the more creativity is enforced. And I think there's a bunch of players I think this is kind of true of. I think Piggyman might be another example of this, is players who want to find an interesting creative path will usually not pick the lamest cards. And when the lamest cards are blocked, those players will start, performing fantastically or a lot better because, suddenly others just can't use much more powerful cards than they're using, and their interesting ideas have a better place to shine. So I think his point that he has been a stronger TTAC player than other tournament formats is a good one. I think, for me, I probably do best when like really lame rule sets are in play, right? And there are going to be other players who do best when those very generic cards, are cut off from use. Have you met any other Triple Triad players in person? No. Think the only one that's been actually possible at one point was Amo, though. What is your biggest weakness as a player? You can evade the question if you think it's targetable. Probably not giving myself enough time to actually look at more than 1 or 2 moves at a time. I'd likely start playing 9-minute open games if they'd get taken fairly quickly in an attempt to try forcing myself to slow down. Open games over 5 minutes, though, tend to sit there for hours. Yeah, they do. And yeah, it's one of those things. It's so easy to get into patterns of kind of playing quickly or playing the first move you see. And it's really hard to find space where you just have lots of open time to explore and let your mind explore and get better at letting your mind explore. Then I have some bonus questions for Dalamar, because, of course, I was really excited to get him for an interview. Most memorable moments? Sorry. I said, folks have described you as the greatest moderator to ever live, and as the greatest moderator that ever will live, which is correct. And he went with, neither? I'll take second greatest, as the site wouldn't even be around without Balls paying for it, and everybody else donating to help. Yeah, that's a nice note to end on. I will say, I love the 4 games of Dal's. Like, I picked out the games I wanted for him, and had most of them picked out way before I was, had the interview ready for him. And so I'm really excited to show 4 games of his. I think they're really good games. They're not even all wins, though most of them are. But just games I thought were really interesting or had really fun moves in them. And where I thought he played really precisely and well against strong opponents, and so will hit, I think, his most important win since the return, but also just some really well played randoms as well. So excited to show that, and really excited to have gotten the interview with Dal. And yeah, I guess that's all I got for you for now. Cheers.